Hey, what's going on guys? This is Jake at That Fit Friend, and today I'm going to be covering 6 cross-training shoes that can be decent picks for wider feet. And now before I dive into these picks and talk about the nuances that make each model good for certain activities, I want to cover 3 things because these are really important. Number 1, I have a foot width that hovers between like medium to wide widths, or D between E widths based on the sizing chart you're going off of. So for my picks, these all work really well for my feet, and if you have a similar foot anatomy, then they should also work well for your feet. But that takes me to my second point, which is at this point in time, I don't think there's a really good cross-training shoe on the market that really nails it when it comes to widths. So when it comes to like E width feet or even wider, I don't think there's a model that's really gonna be great for your foot anatomy, which is kind of a bummer. And honestly, if you're a company watching this, like that is a very underserved market. And if you make a shoe for that foot anatomy, I think you'll see a nice boom in sales, and you can credit that to That Fit Friend here. But the third thing I wanna talk about is that fit can be very individual. And so all of these models are pulled because their widths are a little bit wider compared to their peers, but a lot goes into that. So you also have to consider the midfoot construction. You also have to consider the upper volume, because that will give each of these shoes a slightly different fit. So if one of these models up here is in my wider list, but it doesn't necessarily work for you regarding its width, or if it feels restrictive through the upper volume, note that that's kind of normal because there's a lot of individuality that goes into the last constructions of these shoes and how it's going to interact with our foot anatomy. And if you do have any models that you find that work really well for your foot anatomy and you do have a wider foot, definitely let me know in the comments below. But that being said, let's dive into our first pick. My first pick is going to be the Under Armour TriBase Reign 5. Now, compared to its 4 predecessors, the Reign 5 I think has the widest feeling fit to it, and that's for 2 key reasons. Number 1, with the warp upper here, you get a little bit more space in the toe box, so you do have a little bit more volume in the shoe. And then 2, with the midsole, it does kind of flare out. So the combination of that with the warp upper, I think gives this shoe a wider fit compared to its predecessors, because the first, second, and third iteration in the shoe line were a lot narrower, and then Under Armour changed the last construction, which gave the 4 and 5 a slightly wider fit. Now, a couple of pros that come along with the TriBase Reign 5 is number 1, it's a pretty jack of all trades style training shoe. So if you need a shoe for CrossFit, cross training, and lifting, this can be a good option. The Micro G foam midsole is stable yet responsive, and it feels pretty good for most training contexts. The second thing to like about the shoe is that it has a lower heel to toe drop. So if you like that and prefer that with your training shoes, this can be a good pick. This model has a 2mm drop, which puts them on the lower end compared to their peers regarding their heel to toe drops. The third thing to like about the shoe is that for the most part, it's been a pretty durable shoe. I have yet to have any like major breakdown issues with my model, which has been a big perk. So I think if you want a shoe for a little bit of everything, the TriBase Reign 5 can be a great option. Now, a couple of knocks against this shoe is number 1, they can run pretty stiff, so they do take a while to break in. This model takes roughly 1 to 2 weeks of like good sessions to really break in and get feeling good. So expect a longer break-in time with this model. And the second knock against this shoe, I think, is their longer laces and how this feels when you're breaking them in. You can get a little bit of pressure on the top of your foot with this lacing system, but once the shoe does break in and get more maneuverable, that does kind of subside, but it can make for a slightly uncomfortable process during those first couple of sessions. Overall though, the TriBase Reign 5 can be a viable pick if you need a shoe for a little bit of everything. My next pick is the Strike Movement Haze Trainer. So the Haze Trainer has a slightly wider forefoot compared to some of its peers, and because this model doesn't have as much arch support, I feel like it helps give this shoe a slightly wider fit when you combine that with the jacquard knit upper up here. Now, 3 pros to like with the Haze Trainer is number 1, this can be a really good jack of all trades shoe. I wear this shoe out and about when I'm traveling. I wear them to lift. I can wear them for CrossFit and cross training workouts, and they can hold their own, and you get a nice level of stability and versatility with this midsole. The second thing to like with this shoe is with their sole construction, this model has a nice level of articulation. So if you do like training shoes that are a little bit lower to the ground and have a slightly more minimalist or flexible feel, the Haze Trainer can be a great option. And the third thing to like about this shoe is if you want a shoe for wearing out and about and just some casual wear, I see the Haze Trainer as a really good pick. With a jacquard knit upper in this model, it has a nice clean appearance, so this is one of the few training shoes that I think can be worn in more formal settings and look good, which is something that not every training shoe can do because some shoes do have like that overly gym look to them. Now, 2 cons that come along with the Haze Trainer is number 1, if you need more upper volume, this might not be your best model. This shoe's jacquard knit upper sits a little bit lower, and so if you do have thicker feet, this model will likely feel a little bit snug for you despite maybe having the width that you need. So that would definitely be something to consider with a shoe. And the second con with this model is that if you plan to train outdoors or have any abrasion on this knit, you can run the risk of tearing them. I have broke down 2 Haze Trainers from training outdoors and like dragging my toe doing a burpee get up with a sprint. So definitely food for thought there if you regularly train outdoors with the Haze trainer, but overall, the Haze trainer can be a really good jack of all trades training shoe. There are just certain contexts where the durability might not be the best, and if you need more upper volume, this model may also fall short. My next pick is the Adidas Dropset trainer. So I know what you're thinking, a wide shoe from Adidas, and yeah, this is actually one of the few that does have a slightly wider width because they did build the toe box to be a little bit more wide and anatomical in nature. So with the Dropset trainer, a couple of pros that come along with this shoe is number one, it can be a very viable shoe for athletic style training and lifting. You have a nice stable midsole back here in the heel, and the forefoot is a little bit more responsive. So if you're on the forefoot a lot doing plyos or any form of dynamic work, this shoe can be a good pick. The second thing to like about this model is the outsole tread. You get a nice level of grip with this shoe, so it can also be a good shoe for training on turf. So if you are somebody who has a little bit more of an athletic style bias to your training and you're often training on turf, this could be a viable shoe to look into. The third pro that I have with this model is its overall midfoot construction. So if you do like a little bit more medial support, which can also be a bad thing, and I'll talk about that in a second, the Dropset trainer can be a good pick to look into. Now, a couple of cons that come along with the Dropset trainer is number one, the heel can feel a little bit clunky at times. So while it is nice and stable for lifting, it is kind of blocky in nature. So this is not necessarily my favorite cross training shoe for short runs. So while it can be good for more athletic style sessions and where you're sprinting or in your forefoot a lot doing more interval style running, if you're doing any form of like 2 or 3 mile bouts of running, this model can feel a little bit uncomfortable due to its heel. The second knock against this shoe is with this TPU layer here. If you have a wide foot, especially through the midfoot, this would not be a model that's going to work for you. This will be a better model for athletes and lifters with a wider forefoot, but more of like a medium or neutral width midfoot, because this midfoot can jar into your foot if you have like a flat or an exceptionally wide midfoot. So it's something to definitely think about with this model before picking them up. But the Dropset trainer honestly is a pretty good cross training shoe for what it's worth. There are a couple of areas though where it will fall short when you get more specific with your training needs. My next pick is the Reebok Nano X3. So 3 pros that come along with the Nano X3 is number one, this can be a really good jack of all trades training shoe as well. If you need a model for CrossFit, this shoe's durability has been improved compared to its prior 2 predecessors. This model is stable enough for heavy lifting, and they feel pretty good for more versatile and athletic style training sessions. So if you need a shoe for a little bit of everything, the Reebok Nano X3 I think can be a great option. The second pro that comes along with this shoe is its lift and run chassis system. So this is essentially the chassis system that runs through the lateral midfoot around the heel into the medial midfoot, and there's basically a plate down here that compresses when you're lifting, but then gives you a little bit more pop when you're running and jumping, etc. And with this chassis system, you get a little bit more ankle support, so that's also a perk of this system outside of its ability to give you a little bit more versatility for your training. So I really like that system with the Reebok Nano X3, and honestly, it's a cool piece of tech in this shoe. The third pro that I have with this shoe is the FlexWeave upper construction. Thus far, the upper has been pretty dang durable with this shoe. It's been abrasion resistant for CrossFit, and also playing pickleball in this shoe, this model's upper hasn't ripped yet, which I've been pretty impressed with. So I think the long-term durability of the shoe's upper should also be a really good bet for most folks who want the shoe for a little bit of everything. Now, 2 cons that come along with the Nano X3 is number one, this model can take a little bit of time to break in, so they can run a little bit stiff. So I would say expect like 1 to 2 weeks to break them in. And during that process, you might have to tighten up the laces a lot through the midfoot to help lock that foot down, because you can have a little bit of a stiffer toe box in the shoe during that break-in period. The second con that I have against this model is that if you like a lower heel to toe drop in your training shoes, this model might not resonate with you. This model has a 7mm drop. Now that will work fine for most folks, but if you specifically like flatter shoes or shoes with lower drops that give you a slightly flatter foot position, the Reebok Nano X3 might not resonate with your overall needs. My next pick is the GORUCK Ballistic trainer. So this model has a slightly wider fit for 2 key reasons. Number one, you get a good amount of upper volume through the toe box of the shoe, and 2, this model comes with 2 different insoles. So you have this insole here that has arch support for the 3 arches, and then this model also comes with a thinner, flatter insole. So if you do like a flatter feeling shoe, you can put that in, and that will give you more upper volume as well in this shoe. So 3 things to like with the GORUCK Ballistic trainer is number one, the gradient density midsole does a good job of giving you a nice level of stability. So whether you are lifting, doing cross training, CrossFit, whatever it might be, the shoe should feel plenty stable. And I think if you're going to use this model for like any form of rucking and you like a stabler ride, this model can also be a good pick for that. The second thing to like about the shoe is the overall durability of this model is pretty dang good. So with the Cordura knit upper and with the blend of the outsole and midsole construction, this model is pretty dang solid, and it takes a lot to really break this shoe down. So if you want a shoe that's pretty durable, the GORUCK Ballistic trainer can be a good pick. And the third pro that comes along with this model is the outsole construction and its tread. This model's outsole is built with 3 different compounds to give it a slightly varied feel, and you also get a nice level of traction with this shoe. So now 2 cons that come along with the GORUCK Ballistic trainer is they can feel pretty clunky at times. So with this thicker midsole here, if you like a more minimalist feeling shoe, I don't think you're gonna resonate with this model, and they can take a slightly longer time to break in. This model takes about like 1 to 2 weeks to really break in and get feeling good on the foot. And then the second drawback with the GORUCK Ballistic trainer is that they can feel pretty heavy at times and not as breathable through this midfoot and heel, so they can get a little bit hotter. However, overall, the GORUCK Ballistic trainer is a pretty dang good shoe across the board. There are just slight areas where I think its construction might fall short for some athletes and lifters. My final pick is the Altra Solstice XT2. So of the cross-training shoes in this list, this is the widest model through the forefoot, and this has an anatomical toe box, so if you need as much width as possible through the forefoot, this can be a great option to look into. And that being said, if Ultras typically work for you, you should be safe with this shoe. Now, 3 pros that I have with the Solstice XT2 is number 1, if you like a slightly wider toe box that doesn't have as much of an aggressive taper to it, this can be a great option to explore. So we don't have as much of a taper, so we have a much more rounded toe box, which I think can be a great thing for folks who do like a slightly wider toe box for their training needs. The second pro that I have with this model is its medium density foam midsole does a pretty good job for most training contexts. You can train moderately heavy in this shoe and get a good level of stability, and it's pretty dang versatile for athletic style work. So if you need a shoe for a little bit of everything and you don't necessarily plan on like maxing out your barbell deadlifts over 500 pounds, 600 pounds, the shoe should be plenty stable for your needs, and the midsole should feel pretty dang responsive for more versatile training. The third pro that I have with this shoe is its lightweight upper construction. So the upper construction in this model breathes pretty well. So this is also a pretty good option for training outdoors in the summer or wearing in hotter settings because the breathability of the shoe is pretty dang good across the board. Now, 2 cons that I have with the Altra Solstice XT2 is number 1, the durability can start to fall short in this model. So the outsole here can be prone to lipping off of this midsole here, and also with the breakdown here at the forefoot, you can also run into lipping issues down here. So when it comes to long-term durability, the Altra Solstice XT2 isn't necessarily the best for certain training contexts. The second drawback that I have with this model is it's not going to be the most specific shoe. So this model is not going to work the best for CrossFit, and it's not going to be the best for heavier barbell work. But I do think if you want a shoe with a nice wide toe box and a 0mm heel to toe drop, the Altra Solstice XT2 can be a pretty good option to explore. All right, y'all, that's it this video covering 6 decent cross-training shoe options for slightly wider feet. If you have additional questions on any of these models, drop a comment down below or reach out to me personally. I also have individual reviews on every single one of these shoes, so also check those out if you want more context on one of the shoes and how they perform, how they fit, etc. But as always, guys, drop a like on the video, subscribe to the channel. I'll see you in the next one.